Hello, everybody. Ford, welcome. How you doing?
Hello, hello. I'm doing fantastic. Hold on, I have to mute your stream that is in the side because I was like 5 seconds behind there. Hey yo, what's going on, buddy? How you doing?
Pretty good. So before we get into anything, obviously, Buttoned Up Podcast probably changing the name here soon because
Yes.
there's like 7 other podcasts with this name, and Ford was right. One of them is a fashion podcast. So
I called it. I was like, someone. I feel like that's too good. That has to be something.
right. So that is something that we are going to be changing here soon, but not right now. Other than that, just before we get going, what games have you been playing?
Oh man, I played a lot this week. I thought that kind of the deluge of like titles coming out kind of was ending a few weeks ago. But this week we had Song of Nunu come out, the new League of Legends Riot Forge joint, which started played probably about like 2-3 hours of it. And it is surprisingly high production value.
Right.
Like significantly higher than at least all the other Riot Forge games. Um, things like Ruined King, Hex Tech Mayhem, like all that kind of stuff they did. Good games, totally fine. But they always felt like, yeah, this is an indie game. Whereas playing Song of Nunu, I'm like, oh, this is like a game. Like they've got like cutscenes, characters, like all this kind of stuff
They
going
they,
on.
they feel I feel like they push this one a little bit more than the other ones in terms of being a game, but I mean, they all look kind of great.
Yeah, they've all been great. I think this one is just the first one that we kind of talked about it last week about like indie and being budget and like single A versus double A versus triple A. I feel like this is the first, I guess, like double A Riot Forge game I would say they've made. At least from like I would guess like a budget standard. The music's killer, voice acting's really, really good. You got like classic League characters in there, like Braum shows up, Lissandra's there. I'm like, damn,
Yeah, probably
they're
gonna be a lot
going
of
out with this game.
Freljord. They're gonna go for the freezings.
Yeah, a lot of really cool stuff in there. So I played a little bit of that. I hear it's fairly short. I think it's like about 10 hours or so. So I'm hoping to beat that probably by the next time we talk next weekend. Played more Sea of Stars. That was fantastic.
I want to play it.
Still amazing things. I still don't want to say too much because I don't want to spoil it for you, but it just keeps on getting better and better. What a game. That easily at this point, I think I can easily say it's gonna be in my top 5 of the year. And then the other big game we had released this week was the Talos Principle 2, which is kind of like a room puzzler a la like Portal. You walk into a test chamber, there's like tools around, solve the puzzle, get a thing, go on to the next room, and repeat process essentially. Just played the very beginning of that because I basically started it and then I saw, oh, I probably should have beat the first one. This seems like it actually has like some story stuff going on to where it might actually be pertinent to have beaten the first one. So I've been playing that. And yeah, so a lot of great games going around. Oh, because of Halloween, I did download this one game called In Sound Mind, which was kind of interesting. It basically is like a what would I even call it? I mean, it's a first person walking simulator that has like random combat sections that aren't very good. But
what is it?
In Sound Mind, it's like a horror game.
Never heard of that. I usually stay away from that genre, but
Same. It was Halloween though, so I was like, all right, let me look at what's on sale on Steam, and I found it was like $3. It's pretty good, but a little weird.
There's a horror game that I've always wanted to play that I think it's relatively short, like only a couple hours, if that. And it's not, but it looks really fun, and it's a VR game I always wanted to play on stream. It's called what is it called? It's basically the Duck Hunt horror game.
Duck Hunt horror game.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Hang on, what is that called?
I don't think I've ever. I can't even recall anything in my head that would match it. Duck Hunt horror game. Duck Season.
Duck Season, yes, that is it.
Interesting.
So it's basically you take the role as a kid from the 90s playing Duck Hunt. and your mom keeps telling you to get off the game and this and that, and you don't, and then like she ends up being like murdered behind you. And
what the
yeah,
hell?
and so like basically you're in the game and like the game starts changing. Like you'll kill the duck and then the dog pops out and laughs, and then the next time he comes out he's like bloody and he laughs, and it's like, wait, what? That's not how the game is supposed to be. And then you get off the game,
Huh.
and then you see the mascot, like the duck in a mask, or the dog in a mascot a mascot-esque suit outside your window, and he's just like peeking in, watching you.
Damn. Yeah,
It's
I'm
really
looking at some footage right now.
it's really creepy.
The one thing I'll give horror games, man, is they're creative as fuck. You know, like they may not be my genre, but they really just like all caution to the wind, just do whatever the hell comes to their mind, and I respect it. You know, I
Totally
respect
agree.
it a lot.
Totally agree. Real
Very
quick,
good.
just to make sure that you said Sirens, that it is better. The audio is better. Everything's good. He's balanced out better.
I'm gonna guess we are okay. Yeah, that game's on.
Are you listening back to it too?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, that sounds good. Yeah. That's
Okay.
way
Good.
better.
Okay. So, yeah. If you want to, do you want to jump into it or?
Yeah, so let's go ahead and jump into the topic of the week. Is Bungie filing for bankruptcy? The answer is no, they're not filing for bankruptcy. But you know, mark our words, 2 years from now, who knows what could happen.
Who knows?
So yeah, a bunch of crazy stuff happened with Bungie this week. And it's kind of has a couple of different prongs to it, where one is the kind of tale as old as time that's been happening this year, which is layoffs across the industry. I think we're getting close to about 7,000 people ish laid off from the game industry this year, with this most recent round from Bungie. So it's been pretty rough on that side of things. But then there's also a lot of other prongs to it that come up about what does this mean for Bungie? What does this mean for Destiny? You know, linked to that. And then also just kind of what's going on with live service, because we've seen over basically the past, I'd say, year and a half, maybe a little bit more, the kind of live service bubble popping in a lot of ways. And Bungie has always kind of held true as one of the kind of can't be knocked down live service games. And we have now found out this week that they can, in fact, be knocked down a little bit, not a ton, but at least a little bit.
Now, when it comes to live service, are you considering multiplayer being a live service game? Anything multiplayer?
I think anything that is going to get live service is kind of a weird thing. I think anything that is going to get additional content at a consistent rate, I think I would consider a live service game. Now, there's some things that I would maybe not put into this category that don't have some of the other hallmarks. Something like, for example, Stardew Valley, you know, gets consistent updates pretty regularly, you know, every year or so it gets an update. Would I call it a live service game? No. It doesn't have, you know, all the other kind of traditional hallmarks of, you know, in-game store, microtransactions, you know, seasonal events, like all this kind of stuff that like drives player engagement. I think actually, you know, now that I say that, I think that's kind of the main bar that you're looking at when you're trying to decide if something is a live service game is it set up for player retention? Stardew Valley is set up to just be played, you know, whenever the need to go do some farming strikes you. Whereas a lot of these other live service games are set up to continually try to pull you in for player engagement stats and for, you know, hey, look at what's new in the shop. Hey, look at this new content we just dropped. Oh, look, we've got the Halloween season coming up. Now it's the Christmas season and all this different stuff.
There is a sliding scale to what might be more or less defined as live service.
100%. I don't think it is a just on and off switch of you are live service or you're not live service. I think there's a bit of a sliding scale. I think
would you consider most multiplayer games live service, especially nowadays with seasonal models and stuff like that?
Nowadays, yeah. I think that most multiplayer games are at the very least being designed with live service tendencies within them. Whether or not they're, from a financial standpoint, they're set up for it is kind of a different question. But I think that most have taken cues from games such as Destiny and, all these other live service games. WoW, MMOs, Fortnite, all that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that what you're seeing with the live service bubble kind of popping is, my view on it is, you essentially saw a lot of the big companies come out with their titles, and those have kind of set the foundation, and they kind of ate up a lot of the room. And then you had some games come along that wanted to essentially do those titles, but with a niche. And those titles are the ones that are typically not doing so hot. One that comes to mind a lot, Epic had one that they came out with called Rumbleverse. That was a battle royale, except for it was a wrestling game.
Yeah. I remember that. It popped off for a second, and then it just kind of fell to the wayside.
And that's kind of the problem with most of these live service games, is they do have a good
even name branded.
Yeah, even name branded. Like, they have a good pop off, and that player retention is the absolute killer. Where they go from, oh yeah, we hit 200,000 concurrents on Steam, and then you look at it 2 months later, and it's like,
okay, well then that leads me into one of my first questions. Sure. So do you think that, let's see how to word this. Do you think that is kind of a product of, like, because I mean, I feel like I wouldn't say it's set up to fail, but I feel like these guys got to know that something like this would happen, because you come out with a game that's relatively fun for a minute, but if it's not the drive to, or if you don't get the drive to play it every day like you do with the top 3 or 4 titans like Apex and Fortnite and Destiny, for example. I mean, because like you put those 3 in a room, they're going to crush any other game you put in the room with them. You know what I mean? In terms of numbers and sales and models of battle passes and etc. Something like Rumbleverse is not going to keep like, we know this. We knew it's not. How are we going to be oblivious to the fact that, like, yes, you got 200,000 because 4 of the top streamers in the world played it today, and then people had fun with it. That doesn't make it bad, though. That doesn't mean that it should have never been made. But it can't. But they can never remain on top, because they're not something you want to play every day. So what do you think? Do you think that they know this?
I think to an extent they do. I feel like what a lot of them, I feel like, probably imagine is that, we're going to have a drop off. I don't think they ever see how big of a drop off is going to come. But I also think that a lot of it comes down to, I feel like some of these developers making these games just don't understand that player time is finite, man. There's only so much time that a player can play these types of games, before it essentially becomes a second job, or like in some cases, people are like playing them almost like it's a third job.
That goes into my next question, but I'll save that for a little bit later.
Yeah, people are I feel like they have this expectation of like, oh, we can get somebody in, at least like an hour a day or 30 minutes a day, a match a day or something like that. But that just does not translate to the type of financial incentives you need to keep these games going. I mean, we'll talk about it once we get a little bit more directly into Bungie, but like Bungie missed revenue targets, or is projected to miss revenue targets.
Do you think that might be the unhealthy relationship with the devs to gamers when it comes to that kind of stuff? Because like the way that I see it is, I mean, you look back in the day, and when we can even talk about Bungie, because Bungie is the creators of Halo, the original creators, obviously. So you got something like, let's say, Halo 2 and Halo 3. When they released, they were technically live service. They were pumping out every a couple maps, a map pack every year or so between the game releases, and I feel like that was a healthy relationship, and time played, especially back then, didn't really matter. I don't know how much it does matter today, and that's another question I had for you, but we'll get into that later. But it's like, if I own Halo 2, they got my money. If I play it all year, that doesn't do anything for them. But if I'm consistent, the fact that I do enjoy it, I'm probably in the camp that's going to buy that map pack.
Yeah.
And so that's where they make their money from. Do we need to... Is this an unrealistic expectation of devs that they think that people are going to live on their video game?
I think it's that, but I also think that a lot of these devs probably think that there's going to be a lot more transition from because a lot of these games are free, right? Rumbleverse is free. Hey, come in, try a match, something like that. And I think they think the conversion rate for buying a skin, a vanity item from the store, I think that they believe that that's going to be a lot higher. And I think for a time you could make that argument. I think the data would say that you could make that argument.
I think
But
you have
as
to be a
time
titan to do that, though.
but as time has gone on, I do think that you're just not having that conversion rate anymore of people saying, oh yeah, I'm going to buy this skin or I'm going to buy this, that, especially with the idea, battle passes in a way kind of ate up a lot of that lunch, because now for me personally, if I'm going to try a game that's like free, the maximum I would do is buy a battle pass, $10 battle pass. Sure. I'm going to be playing this for a little bit. I might buy that, but I'm not going to buy that $20, $25, $30 skin that's inside of your store. Like there's just no way. I'm
Do
not.
you think the average gamer is a consumer when they don't have to be?
Do I think that they're the ones that are purchasing that stuff?
Yeah, so like I feel like you are you're I wouldn't say you're the anomaly, but if there's a sliding scale of like people who will never buy something, and then you got your average gamer, and then maybe like people like you who maybe not at the farthest end where you're buying everything, but you're probably a little bit further than your average of
yes
of purchasing things to support and stuff like that. So do you think that the average gamer, if they don't have to spend money, because the average gamer is going to buy the $70 game still, you're a guy on the left, on the left, I'm more on the sliding scale of like $70, we're moving from this $60 to $70 purchase, I might not buy it, but if it's free, I'll play it. I might buy something as well as, but do you think your average guy is going to, average gamer, excuse me, is just going to buy something that if the game is free, if it's not a Titan, like in Rumbleverse, for example?
If it's not a Titan, no, I do not think so. I think that the reality is that you probably aren't going to be getting that first initial purchase from an average consumer until at least like a week or so in. And that's if your game is lasting that long. That's if their friends are joining in. That's if a bunch of different factors that lead the average gamer to a lot of these games. Average gamers obviously have a lot more different drives than, like you said, somebody like me. And I would agree. I am closer to that scale. I'm not a whale, but I am a little bit more open in spending money inside of these stores. I think average gamer, you're really having to look, I look at my friends as a lot of time as like kind of the counteracting to me, because they're definitely in the average gamer camp, if not even like further down that sliding scale. And them buying anything in a store is you're fighting for that dollar essentially, from those people.
That's the thing is like, so someone like me, I'm now on like something like League of Legends that's been out for 12 years. I've probably spent upwards of a couple hundred on or something like that. So I don't feel like that's completely unreasonable. I have friends that have spent thousands on it, and then I have friends that have spent zero on it. But in terms of time played, I typically put a lot of hours in, but not a lot of money in on these live service games. Like Rainbow Six, one of my favorite games of all time. League of Legends, one of my favorite games of all time. And I play these games regularly, and I have thousands and thousands and thousands of hours in these games, but I don't really spend a dime. Am I crushing that company? Not saying, but if everyone were like me, essentially, yeah, right?
If everybody was like you, yeah, but I think that the existence of people like you, the reality is that you're essentially a promoter to these companies.
Okay, that's fair.
You are essentially a person that is getting other people into the game that don't have as much financial resilience as you. To put it bluntly, essentially.
No, that's fair. That's a good way to look at it. I thought I had it, checkmate on you, but that's good. That's good. That's a good answer.
Yeah. Like, for example, I think that a lot of like podcasters and stuff would be considered essentially promoters and bringing people in to then get them to spend money, which is why you see a lot of these, higher streamers and stuff like that. They typically get a lot of the content for free because they are a promoting megaphone essentially to get other people in who are going to spend. Oh, I saw Shroud using X, Y, and Z, whatever in a game, that's going to drive people to want to buy that thing.
Right. Okay. That's a good answer.
And so thanks. I think about live service games probably an unhealthy amount. So, but yeah, I think the reality is for if you're not one of these titans, it's really tough to get that purchase, which is why I think that a lot of live service games that have been coming out more recently have been doing a little bit smarter, and it's been rubbing up against a lot of gamers because it's bucking the trend. I'm going to use my favorite game of the year, Exoprimal, as an example in this, where Exoprimal is a live service game. It's one of Capcom's first like big forays into live service, and them really wanting to make a go of it. They had like the Resident Evil like reverse thing or whatever, but we don't really count that. Exoprimal is their first standalone title of, hey, we want to try this live service stuff out. And with that, a lot of people were like, cool, it's going to be free to play. Day of launch, $60. And that bucked against a lot of people. A lot of people were like, oh, I would have totally played this game if it was free. But I think
playing doesn't give them money. And so
exactly.
That's kind of my point is like, let's just give it simple numbers, because obviously the numbers are in the hundreds of thousands probably. But
sure.
let's just say 0 to 10. Let's say you got 10 people who would play this game if it were free, but only 2 of them would buy skins. So that's 1/5 of your audience that are even buying skins, and maybe even less than that. We're being honest, probably 1/10. But then if it's not free, you're losing 5 people. You're losing half your people. They're not going to play it if it costs money initially. But then let's say none of those 5 people buy skins. If none of those 5 people buy skins, but they spent the $60, they maybe didn't buy 10, 20, 30, 40, even $50 worth of skins, but you got more money out of it, and they got to have these numbers crunched, right? Like, so I mean, because I think if you're a Titan, you can be free today in the market.
Yes.
If you're the new League of Legends and you think you can compete, be free. If you can't compete, don't be free.
I would even, the thing is you're never going to compete against a Titan. And I think that's what a lot of these live service games need to realize. You are not going to be Fortnite. They need to understand that right now. You are not going to be Fortnite. You are not going to be Destiny. You are not going to be Apex. You're not going to be any of those things. Not even close. And that's why,
especially not nowadays, because like League of Legends was such an anomaly, right? It came from Dota after Dota, and Dota itself was an anomaly because it was like a mod from Warcraft or whatever.
3.
So it's like,
yeah, completely different era back then where you could
we're in a very corporate heavy world, so they're going to be pushing out these Titans anyways.
And also we're just in a time frame now where so many games come out that you're just competing for time, and if everybody's free, there's just no way you're going to get the type of time and retention that you need. Whereas if I spend $60 on a game, you bet your ass I'm going to play a bunch of that game.
Yeah, but then you get into the category of, which is another topic we can talk about, but then you get into the category of like confirmatory bias.
Yes.
Or do you like it because you paid money for it, or do you like it because you like it? Usually it's a lot of people like things or say that they like things. It doesn't matter if they like it or not, but I'm saying in general, like if you say, oh, this is, it's a pretty good game, but that you're only saying that because you spent money on it. Not saying you did for the Exoprimal. I believe you full-heartedly, but but I'm just saying that's what happens a lot. Even in my friend groups, they're like, yeah, it's all right, and I'm like, yeah, you say that because you spent $70 on it.
Yeah, get a month removed from that game, and you're like, man, I really blew $70 on that game.
Right.
And yeah, that is the thing, is it doesn't introduce more risk to consumers. Consumers need to be more educated on the titles that they are going to purchase. But I think in the long run, these live service games, they got to start charging up front again if they really want to survive. Like, I feel like that's where the live service bubble has to go now, which is, we're still a live service game, but there's no more of this come in free, come in, blah, 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 blah. Like, no, it has to be you have to purchase a ticket to the show.
Okay, so do you think that maybe because I don't want to go into Bungie yet, but you did say that like Sony has this push for like 12 live service games or whatever.
Yeah.
So in that case, why are they pushing this so hard when I feel like this model is so niche, right? And not in a bad way. But like the not just the live service model, but like games in general. it's such an oversaturated market. So like you said, your time is valuable and you're pushing for time. If they're doing this massive push for live service, that's kind of like competing with yourself in a corporate world or in a capitalist world. Is that a good thing?
Yeah, 100%. This is one of the issues I brought up with some friends and stuff before with the whole Sony big push for the 12 games is yeah, you're now going to have 12 titles out that are all going to be competing for your players' time, all PlayStation players' time. And there's only so many ways you can divide that up. Obviously I don't have insight into Sony, but my guess is that they believe my guess is that out of those 12 games, they know that a handful of them are not going to make it and will be a sunk cost essentially.
But why are we doing
But
that?
I think
Are we just
there's something
throwing
to be
shit at the
said.
wall till it sticks? Or
I was about to say that exactly. I think it's a little bit of that where as a company, I think they probably see that a lot of the kind of RNG that there is with live service games and whether or not they pop off or not. And so instead of putting all of our eggs into, say 3 games baskets, they're like, let's do 12 games, see which ones stick and, go hard into those. I don't know if I necessarily agree with that plan. I think that they probably would have been better off like probably half those amount of titles, like
right, I'm
6
saying the
titles.
more we get, don't you feel like we're diminishing quality quite a bit?
Especially since of the ones that we know, a lot of them are eating each other's lunch already. Of the titles that have been announced of the live service games, we have Fair Games, which is like a Payday-esque, the Finals-esque kind of extraction shooter. Not fully extraction shooter like something like Marathon might be or like Escape at Tarkov, but similar to that. Then you've got a kind of strict like online multiplayer, like Halo kind of arena style shooter. A title that's coming out, and then you've got Marathon. Those are kind of the 3 big ones that we know already, and I guess Last of Us Factions, but we know barely anything about that, so I don't even think it's worth really bringing into the conversation. But out of those 3 titles that we know at least what the genre is and what these games are, those 3 games all eat each other's lunch. That is the same audience. Sure, they're a little bit nicher, so you could say, oh, we're specifically going for like the Halo guys, but at the end of the day, it's all kind of still the same audience. And I just don't see how those 3 games, Marathon, I have trust that it's going to be very good and it
Well,
will
and
do
not
well.
only are you eating their like your own people's lunches there on the same thing, but also you're also taking away because the Halo guys are also not all of them, but a big portion of the audience that are the big arena or arcade shooter fans.
Mhm.
They're also Fortnite fans.
Yeah.
And I mean, yeah, you might take a Fortnite player away for a day or 2 week, but you're not taking them away for life.
Yeah.
It's just not going to happen.
Especially with like Fortnite players, they've had so much time, so many seasons at this point. Yeah, it's a sunk cost fallacy where you've already got how much money sunk into Fortnite,
Right.
probably,
Right.
right? I'll completely come clean with my bias. I've sunk a lot of money into Destiny, right? And so I am like, I'm kind of riding with Destiny until it ends. Granted, I still find the game very fun, so I'm not like holding myself at gunpoint to stay with it. But
Well, that kind of makes me leave a note. I don't want to go too off topic, or not off topic, but on a tangent here. But that is a kind of a I want to stick a pin in that about
Sure.
sunk cost, so we can come back to that.
Sure. Yeah, we could come back to that. I think that'll be perfect once we get into kind of the end of Bungie's 10-year plan. But to kind of encapsulate the whole Sony 12 games, I think, there's already been reports that they're scaling back on that they aren't going forward with as many games.
Probably
we'll
healthier.
we'll see if even like the games that got announced, like Concord, the arcade shooter, man, they showed us like one like aesthetic trailer, and I'm like already I do not think this is going to hit. I'd be shocked if they keep going with Concord. I think that studio even already got hit with layoffs. So I don't know how that title is going to go. Fair Games, Jade Raymond is the head of that studio. She is kind of an icon in the game industry. So I want to have more faith in that title that is going to be good. But again, I just don't know how much of an audience you got for a Payday-esque shooter that's going to be able to hold up the type of money that Sony would want to make off of a title like that. Like, I just don't know if you have that audience that exists.
Right.
Even like
you have to really be
to,
innovative in the space to.
you have to be innovative in the space, and like you have to really bring something to get those types of numbers. That's why like I do think Marathon has a chance of doing that, just because Marathon is going to be the first AAA from a big studio, like big push of a extraction shooter. You know, we have a bunch of extraction shooters on the market.
Yeah, but it's even though we have a bunch, which I only know of two. And really one of them's not even a shooter. I think that is still so untapped to have a titan in the industry come in and swoop in. I think that's genius of Bungie to do, because I mean, think about it. That's kind of what Bungie's good at. I mean, shooters came out and they were like, "Oh, you mean Halo?" Yeah, and then it's like, "Oh, looter shooters are becoming popular like Warframe." You mean Destiny? They just drop bomb after bomb. And they're doing great. So I have full faith in Marathon.
Yeah, I have full faith in Marathon that it's going to be very good. I don't know, because we don't know what the numbers they expect to pull in are. I don't know if it's going to hit those numbers. I have a feeling that it will. I kind of have a thought that, battle royale fatigue is starting to set in. A lot of people are getting a little tired of that battle royale genre. We're seeing a lot of player drops off of those games, just kind of general sentiment around it. And I think,
but where do those players go?
I think they go to extraction shooters.
Okay.
I think extraction shooters are going, things like Marathon are going to be close enough to a battle royale, like fulfilling the same kind of dopamine and gameplay.
I thought you were saying, because I already classified them close together. I thought you were saying like that might be a bad thing for extraction shooters. You're saying that's a good thing for extraction shooters, right?
Yes.
Okay.
I think if Marathon was still hitting next year, well, it's been reported that it's now getting delayed out of next year to 2025. We'll see if that happens. But if it was coming out next year, I think it would destroy. I think it would come in and eat so much battle royale lunch, it'd be insane. And I still think it can do that in 2025. But by that point, you might have a little bit more competition in this space. So that's why I'm kind of like, I don't know.
Right.
100% how it's going to land, but I think it will be successful.
Yeah, but even if you have a little bit of competition within the next 2 years, are you still afraid if you're Bungie? You know what I mean?
I don't think so, because I don't think anybody else would be able to like dig in a trench that heavy within 2 years. Like even if we're talking about end of 2025 for Marathon, I don't see anybody, like even if beginning of next year a big extraction title came out, I still think you're within that window to where you could launch and still get an audience, eat some of that lunch, and if anything, iterate on some of those ideas that title brought. So it might even be to their benefit if another extraction shooter or something came out.
Right. Okay. So if you wanted to jump right into Bungie, I do. One of the questions or notes that I kind of made for the thing was like, it just, I put, and I'll read it verbatim and we can expound upon it. But I said live service games that are alive typically make a lot of money. Is it viable to push so many more? And this is going back to the Sony having 12. Do we need more? And we kind of already answered that a little bit, but but you already kind of answered it. They are eating their own lunch. I mean,
I will add on to it just a little bit with the do we need more? This is going to be like very antithetical to the typical gamer, I feel like, but I do feel like there's not enough live service games until every genre has a live service title, essentially. Not necessarily that I say that's a good thing, but I still think that you can live service almost any genre still. And there's a lot of genres that have not been tapped for that. I brought up Stardew Valley earlier. I think that you could make a live service Stardew Valley game. It might even exist. I know there's one called like Palia, which I think is like kind of that, but I think that there's still a lot of live service games that can happen. And, I'm a very open live service apologist. I love live service games. I think that the idea of the community that can build around live service games is amazing. I've spent the past 5 years, give or take 4 years, 5 years, running a Destiny community. And it's been one of the best experiences of my life. And I think that's something that you can really only get in that exact way with live service games. And so I think we could use some more, but I think that moving forward, they have to be a lot smarter and they have to understand if they're actually filling a gap that needs to be filled.
I would
Going
agree
back
with
to
that.
Rumbleverse, I don't think Rumbleverse filled a gap that needed to be filled.
I don't think it
It's a
needed to be
cool
filled, but
idea.
it is a very unique idea, but it doesn't do anything for anybody, I feel like.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the thing is like, I think it's a unique idea. Cool. Sell it for $40, $50, $60. Don't make it a live service game. Just make it
That
a
goes
10.
into my next point that will maybe lead us into Bungie itself is when these things come out and then they fail, how are these? So I'm the layman, I'm the average Joe guy. I have a regular job. I'm sitting here streaming on Twitch, like I'm not like a corporate bigwig with a background in economics and business. And you would think that these people do have those credentials and they do know these things and they are crunching these numbers. But it seems like when these types of things happen, they seem so surprised. Like what did you think was going to happen with, let's say, Rumbleverse? Like, how are we not already prepared for this? You sunk a cost, you made the game, and then you made it free, and then no one bought it. How are we like, oh man, well, we gotta go belly up and sell everything or get rid of everything or get rid of our people, like. And this kind of leads into the whole Bungie thing, not making the revenue and then laying people off. How are we not ready for this? Like we've had the same model. And if anything, I could argue that the game is bigger, better, and more popular than it's ever been. Not just Destiny, but a lot of these games. And so if you're missing revenue, you should have been prepared for that. That shouldn't be, I could be completely out of pocket here, but you shouldn't be missing 45% of the revenue because you should have prepared for that 45% to be gone if it's going to be gone. Because the game, in my opinion, at least in Destiny, is in a good state. It's the best it's ever been, and it's very fun. And people complain about, well, there's microtransactions. Like, yeah, duh. Yeah. They have to keep the game afloat. But not only that, like, I'm okay with buying new content. Whenever they give me content, like, oh, hey, there's a new dungeon, there's a new raid, there's a new expansion. I'm buying that because I like the game and I want to continue to play it. But people are like, well, no one's buying their skins. So then they should have prepared for that. How are they? Are they just taking, let's say they made $100, like just keep it simple. They made $100. Are they taking 80% of that money and they're just like throwing it in the air and spending it and doing whatever they want with it? How are we not obviously projecting like people aren't going to like why not pull back a little bit and just be like, hold on, let's see if anyone actually does buy these things. You can't bank on people buying your skins every week. Or however often they think that because like time doesn't give them money. Like it does a little bit. Yeah. You made the counterpoint of like we're kind of advertisements for the game. The more I play it, the more I want my friends to play it. Mm-hmm. And eventually, my friends might put in that $1 or $10 to buy a skin. But ultimately, they should have prepared if we don't. Right? I mean,
yeah. So I think you hit on a bunch of amazing points there, and I'm gonna tackle them in three ways. So I'm gonna tackle first things like Rumbleverse. How did you not see this coming? And then I'm gonna transition that into Bungie. So I think with something like Rumbleverse, the reality is, from what I'm able to gather, a lot of these studios know that they are making a gamble. At the end of the day, live service is a gamble, but it's a gamble that you go in and you say, if we hit, sky's the limit. We're gonna make insane amounts of money. And if we don't, it is what it is. We sell off the technology, we sell off the, studio or whatever it might be. Epic picks up a bunch of these live service studios to basically feed into the ever-growing Fortnite machine. And so I think that is essentially where they get it from, is we're going to take a gamble. We're going to see if this hits. I do think that more than likely, a lot of those studios were looking at kind of the COVID, and this is how I'm going to link it into Bungie. The COVID kind of, all of a sudden, so many people had time during COVID. So many people had so much more time. Players had so much more time to pump into these games. And I think they just don't account for the end of essentially that extra time. Eventually COVID ends. People go back to work. They're not working from home anymore. Some of them are, but for the most part, you're having people having to go back into work. People are getting their jobs back. Unemployment's going down, all that kind of stuff. and that ends up leading to players just not having enough time. And they probably looked at the numbers of, okay, how much player time do we think we can get? And they're probably just not hitting that. And I think that's exactly kind of what happened with Bungie here, plus a couple of additional things. I think that Bungie was probably not ready for, one, the COVID era to end and people to not have as much time for the game. I think that's probably a small amount of it. You know, if I had to take the 45% and break it up into chunks, I think that would maybe be a 5 to 10%. And if you're 5 to 10% behind targets at Bungie, you probably don't do the layoffs, right?
Okay, so well, then I have a quick question then. So if the if the number's going up, if we're at this if we're watching the stock lines essentially go up,
sure.
If our graph's going up, why are they not ever expecting it to plateau? Why are we looking for this infinite money generator? Like, why, for example, before COVID, they were probably steadily growing as well. But like when COVID hit, it shot probably straight up. It wasn't even an incline anymore. It went straight up. And so what the hell did they think was going to happen? Not just Bungie, but anybody. Do these companies, and then it's not just even gaming. This goes outside of anything. This is all capitalism. I feel like a lot of these companies feel like that everything's just going to keep skyrocketing. It's like, no, dude, go back to before. Like, what was it doing before? But they were prepared before, but all of a sudden, because they got a huge boom, that's what I'm saying is, where did the money go? Because like,
so I think
they losing it. Where did it go? How did you think it was going to just go infinitely?
So I bet they actually probably planned for it. I bet that Bungie probably planned for a little bit of a fall off this year with Lightfall, like the Lightfall year. I bet they expected, or at least planned, that there's a possibility that we go down a little bit. I think the thing that they did not plan for, and in reality, I think no one kind of planned for, was 2023 being the year it was for video games. So many games are asking for your time right now, and they are 10 out of 10 genre defining bangers.
Yeah, but a lot of those aren't even live service. So once you finish Tears of the Kingdom, and once you finish Hogwarts, and once you finish Baldur's Gate, maybe not so much Baldur's Gate because it's like a limitless game. The game's like 1,000,000 hours. But you know, once you finish these games, you come right back to Destiny if you were a player already, right?
You would. But the problem is that typically in an average year, you're only getting 3 to 4 of these types of games for the whole year. So they can say, oh yeah, this is Tears of the Kingdom month. We're going to see a drop in player retention, but then they'll be back because, you know, then there's nothing else until, you know, whatever, August or something.
So
like
what
that,
are these gamers doing? Are these gamers that aren't playing? Is it because they're also not purchasing? Because it's hard for me to look at it from my perspective because I just am not playing. But my time doesn't give them money. But I guess if I were the other guy to maybe pump in a $10 here, $10 there for a skin.
Here, yeah.
Okay.
Give me this Eververse stuff. And so that's where you're losing a lot of that kind of stuff.
So if I'm not playing, then I'm not paying. Some people maybe.
In some cases, which is why, you know, they specifically do sell things like the full annual pass, because then they get your $100 for the year, and that helps a lot with making it
whether you're playing or not.
Whether you're playing or not,
right.
They got your $100 for the year. Anything else you spend on it is, you know, obviously awesome for them, but at the end of the day, they got your $100.
Okay.
But they still expect a certain amount of microtransactions to come through. And that's still a part of the business plan of, oh, we're going to sell this awesome skin line in Eververse. This, you know,
do you think that there's a way to have a healthier relationship from their perspective with the money then? And like they make a game and a product that we want to pay and play, and then anything else, like, because you said they expect, and that's a terrible word to use, I think, in a market where we're already paying for the expansions, we're already playing and putting our time in, and like you said, spreading the word out to other people. Is it healthy to expect the other microtransactions, like the frivolous microtransactions? Is that a healthy business model? I mean, shouldn't that be extra money?
I mean, it is, but at the same time, when you're Bungie and you're putting out as much content as they put out, I mean, really, like, if you look at Bungie versus like any other live service game, the amount of content they make is honestly staggering.
Absolutely, I agree with it. That's why reading anything on the internet, I'm like, what are you guys saying?
But that's the thing, is the healthy thing for everybody, and gamers aren't going to like this, is they should charge way more money for the expansions and for the year. That's the real thing. But the problem is as a company, that's essentially, that's essentially a death wish. If they came out and said, guys, we heard you, we're going to cut out, a bunch of the microtransactions. Maybe we'll keep a few here and there. We're going to cut it all out. But Destiny's now $200 a year. The uproar would be insane. People would just think that Bungie is the most corrupt company ever, when in reality, that's really what game companies should be doing. The price of the game staggered greatly back in the late 2000s and didn't go up until recently to $70. While if you look at the cost of video game development, it's ballooned way past that, way past that, which is why they have to introduce these other revenue streams, is because you're not going to be able to go up to Jimmy Two Shoes on the street and say, hey, Destiny expansion is $120 now, and the seasons are $20.
Well, especially for a new player. A new player is not going to want to pay that off rip.
Exactly. I'd pay $200 for a year of Destiny, but
but you're also addicted to it. You're into it.
Exactly. Yeah, I'm into it. I'm not just the game, but like the IP in general. Like I'm into the IP. And so that's kind of the hard place in the wall that they're stuck between. Is we could charge significantly more, equivalent to what our development costs are, or we can go off of microtransactions, and data shows that microtransactions should be able to make up that, that amount, while still keeping players generally happy with the price of the content they get for the year. And so that's kind of where that decision comes down to. Do I think that some of the microtransaction stuff has maybe been slightly aggressive? I think there's some stuff that probably shouldn't have been microtransaction
like
by
what?
Bungie. I think that the transmog stuff, like how you can buy you can only get like 10 bounties a season to get transmog stuff, but then if you want more, you have to buy, I think it's like $2 or $3 for like a transmog piece. I think stuff like that, I think you should have just made that a grind. Just let them grind as many of the bounties as they want. I can't imagine.
I think it should be both.
It could be, yeah, and that's the thing. They could have.
I think you should be able to buy it if you want to buy anything cosmetic. I think you should always be able to buy. I don't think you should be able to buy the same thing. So, for example, like transmog, the access, the ability to transmog, I think should be purchasable. Let's say $1 per transmog. Let's say $1 per transmog, little piece, and then. But there's also a grind. So an hour or however long a bounty would take, and you get 10 of those a week or whatever, right? So it roughly translates to the same. It's like, well, I don't have time. I'll spend the money. And so then you have this balance where you get the hardcore gamers that just want it now, and they're going to pay for it. But then you got but then I think that there should always be things where there should never be microtransactions, where like Gears of War did this. Gears of War 2 or 3, or maybe it was Judgment. Either way, one of the later Gears of Wars, they had this thing where I think it was 3, and they had it to where like you could get golden guns, and it was like get 1,000 headshots, and you got these golden like lances, and I'm like, dude, that's amazing. But you could also buy it.
Yeah,
there should be a money skin or there should be something that costs money, but it should not be the same. Like, I have a billion skins that cost money, but have a billion different ones for the grind. Yeah. Because players want to know that it's like, if you want to look cool and you want to pay for it, fine. But I should look different than you if I spent my time on it and as a player. But that might even incentivize me to spend money on something else later if you made something cooler. But if they're separate, that's fine. But you can't be like, well, you grind for 10,000 hours and this person can pay $100. It's like, okay, I guess.
Yeah, and I think, at least from the perspective of player retention, I think Bungie could do a little bit more in regards to that, kind of having a longer term reason for players to do a lot of stuff. I know competitive and PvP was one that they languished on for a while. Obviously, we've been getting some stuff in that. I still think they could do more with that also, but we're getting updates on it, so I'm trying not to be too hard on them about that kind of stuff. But I think that was the reality is, too, kind of looping back to where did the 45% go? I think they didn't expect for losing a lot of players' time. And I also think that comboed with Pasta actually says something similar to what I'm about to say. I think that comboed with the kind of just general sentiment from Lightfall was really the killing blow on a lot of this stuff, where people weren't hot on Lightfall. I still think people are a little hard on Lightfall. I think it actually was one of the better expansions we've gotten, at least from a gameplay, like the actual game itself. The campaign, I get it. Yes, the Veil, all that stuff, I know. But I still think the actual game itself was pretty good.
Yeah, I wouldn't say that there's much difference in terms of the game, but the story was very lacking, very lacking,
and that's pretty bad.
But I don't pay. But I don't pay for the story personally. I pay for the access to everything that the year is going to give me.
And I get that, but I do think that there's a lot of people who, even if they don't care about the story necessarily, like, you know, they're not like me.
Well, it's less that I don't care about it, but I don't care if it was bad. But it did suck that it was bad, but I didn't care if it was.
Yeah, and I think that going into this year of just amazing games, I'm sure, you know, they've been doing play tests on Final Shape, and it's been getting good, not great feedback. People are saying, "Oh, it's good, not incredible, amazing, great." I bet they had those same things for Lightfall, where people probably said, "It's good, you know, it's okay."
Okay, then
I
have a question. What could make it great? What could make Final Shape great other than the story? Because the model is the model is the model. We get what we get out of Destiny. They're not changing the game. It's not like, oh my god, they completely changed the formula. We have different ultimates. We have a new. Nothing is going to, because like if a new subclass in Lightfall and, well, the story wasn't good, but like the gameplay is essentially the same because it always will be. Yes. But we also got a new subclass. What is going to make it be good, like great? Or versus good?
I'm gonna pin that. Okay, because I want to finish this train, and then we will get into we'll kind of finish up the 45% miss, and then we'll get into Final Shape, because I got a lot to say on Final Shape. So I think that they probably had those play tests for Lightfall that said it was good, it was okay, you know, it wasn't going to be their best, but it was going to be solid. And I'm sure that they made the decision where they said that's good enough. Final Shape is going to be, you know, we believe that Final Shape is going to be so good that we can have a bit of a dip from Witch Queen and still be fine. But like I said before, you dip during this year, you're losing a lot of people to a lot of 10 out of 10 experiences. Literally, like almost every month had a 10 out of 10, if not 2 or 3 10 out of 10, 9 out of 10 experiences. And so that, you know, that coupled with Lightfall not being the best thing they've put out, you know, since Witch Queen, you know, not being better than Witch Queen, I guess I would say, I think caused a really big kind of fall off of players. And I do think that, once again, if we're splitting up the 45%, I bet the whole microtransaction thing probably wasn't even all that much. Maybe another 10%. So at that point, we're at like 20-ish% of the revenue miss. I think that extra 25% you missed was Final Shape pre-orders. I think that, because imagine if Infinity War with Avengers was mid, right?
Yeah, but wait a minute. Hold on, because that means that you're paying for a product that doesn't exist yet. So that might be a miss, but it's not really a miss because it's not even out yet.
It's a miss then because it's still within your financial. It's still a miss because it's within your financial projections of the year.
Of next year, though, technically, because that's when we're actually getting. Yeah, I guess, but that's when we're getting the product. It just seems like an odd. That just seems like an odd security that they might have, because clearly it didn't work.
Yeah, well, and once again, in reality, if we hadn't have had it, once again, this is why I say it's a coupling amount of factors. It's not just one thing,
right?
You know, if we hadn't have had the whole Lightfall player fall off, which was led to the monetization. Basically, if I took out that other 20% from the other stuff, and you just had a 25% dip in pre-orders, they probably would have just went like, "Oh, that sucks, but we can make it up. We can cross that line." But 45% is when you start going, "Oh shit."
Well, yeah, that's a lot.
We got problems, right? You know, Paul Tassi published an article where, you know, people inside the studio have talked to him and essentially said if they had not gotten bought by Sony, they'd be in trouble. You know, there'd be a lot less, or a lot worse than the 8% layoff that they had. And so I think that once again, it's a coupling amount of things. If Final Shape pre-orders were low, which they have said as much that they were, and like I said, I would guesstimate that makes up 25% of the miss. That's really, they could have made that up, but coupled with everything else, it's hard to make that up. And I think this is kind of the perfect segue into, okay, now everything rides on Final Shape. If you've got a 25% miss, player retention is down, player sentiment is down. Like I hate throughout the years how every expansion, the Destiny kids will basically be like, this is make or break for Bungie, and it's never been make or break, right? It's like, even if it's bad, it's still gonna do fine, it's still gonna do good.
That was kind of my point.
Yeah, but now I am at the point looking at all the numbers, looking at all the insider information we're looking at, and it is like, oh, Final Shape is kind of make or break. Bungie's
well, then it sounds like it's going to be break, because even no matter how good it is, it's still like, what is so different besides the actual story than any of the other expansions? Because the seasons have always felt similar. They're not like, I've never been like, dude, you have to come in this season. This season is good. So it's not the seasonals, it's not the actual seasons. That's what keeps people playing, but that's not going to get people to start playing. And then the story, I guess you could be like, this story is really good, but do we really think that one of these expansions is going to literally make or break the game? Because they're all the same, essentially, honestly.
So I think that
in terms of what we get, I should say, because we get a raid, we get a dungeon, we move forward in the season, we get another raid, we get another dungeon. We're getting the same content, I should say.
Yes, but I think that we've now reached a point where that same content is not satisfactory, and I think that's why it's kind of like Final Shape has to be more. And they've even said as much. They said in their press release where they said they want Final Shape to not just stand with the likes of Taken King, Forsaken, and all that kind of stuff, but they wanted to exceed that. And when you really look at it, that's a extremely tall order, at least when comparing to Forsaken, because you got to think about
okay, that's what's gonna say. What do you think is Forsaken? What sets it above?
We actually, I knew,
because I would say the Taken King. I would agree with the Taken King, because I felt that way back in D1, that it was the end all be all. It was so good. It was so pinnacle for Destiny. Versus, like, if I would have went back to the Prison of Elders like type era, I was like, yes, people loved it, but I was like very unimpressed as a consistent Destiny player versus something like the Taken King. However, the Taken King did actually give me something different than the Prison of Elders. They just gave me like one little campaign mission, and then the Prison of Elders, which is like a mini raid. Taken King gave me a raid, which is what I wanted. They gave me exploration, which is what I wanted. But I don't feel like Destiny is exploration anymore. I think they've shifted the grounds a little bit. If you put me on the Dreadnought and had me explore, I would think that you're just pulling for my time, and and it would feel cop out, like, you know what I mean? It would feel cheap.
Yeah. So I pulled up the list right here. I think you're right as far as like the explorable zones. I think I've definitely been more of like, the explorable zones are cool. That's not why I'm here. That's not why I'm like, oh, I got to get Lightfall to get Neomuna.
Right.
Neomuna's cool.
It's a tedious grind.
The ideas and stuff, like, I love the idea of introducing these things, but the actual like zone itself, I mean, I'll do it for the couple weeks of the expansion,
right,
and then I'm going to go back to doing raids, dungeons, the playlist activities and everything. But just to kind of put it in perspective of what we got with Forsaken, Pal brings up Forsaken was the last make or break in his opinion. I 100% agree with that. And I think Taken King was the other. Taken King and Forsaken both represent major turning points for the franchise. And I think that Final Shape has to meet up to that. But you're talking about Forsaken. This is what was in Forsaken. 2 new zones, Tangled Shore and Dreaming City. A raid and a dungeon together. You had Last Wish and you had Shattered Throne. You got 10 exotic weapons, 12 exotic pieces of armor. You got 4 new PvP maps, 4 new strikes, 9 new subclass trees, the bow weapon class. You got a new ritual activity with Gambit, and you got a new Scorn enemy race. Now compare that to, say, Lightfall. We did not get any PvP maps. We got one new strike, I believe. We did get a new subclass, so we did get that, but we didn't get updates to the other subclasses. We did not get a new weapon class. We did not get a new ritual activity. We got less exotics, less weapons. We got a raid, not a dungeon, and we only got one explorable zone. And so it's significantly less. Now, granted, Forsaken is when they still had Activision, and they essentially had like 3 to 4 support studios building up a lot of the content for Forsaken, which is why I feel like them saying that they want to be better than Forsaken is almost an impossible task. Unless they're going to delay this thing to like 2025, I do not see a reality where it can be as good as Forsaken. You know, just they introduced a new ritual activity, right? Like even that alone, I'm like, that's a lot of work, you know?
I think, okay, so while some of those things, more is better. Like more dungeons is better. More or whatever, more PvP maps. I don't even play PvP, and I would argue that that's good. That's really good.
That's huge. Yeah.
Because the PvP is something that does bring people back. If they're done with the raids and they're done with everything, that's something that people are going to come back for. Maybe not me, but I could see that. So more is better in some cases. But do you really expect to get more enemy races? Do we care? I mean, yeah, a little bit, but it's like, do you want? Are we getting a new enemy race every 6 months? Like, is that what we want?
I agree with that. I don't think the enemy race is a huge thing. If anything, I actually like the way they've been going. Where
or even exotics, though. Like, do we want more exotics that we're not going to use? Let's be real. I know that you like to have fun in the game, and I've been exploring my options a little bit more. But there's out of the however many, we have like 600 plus exotics or more than that. How many are we actually using? Let's be real. 50. Yeah. That's not even a fraction. So do we want more? Does that make it better?
I still think that it does. I think if you would have asked me pre them kind of like redoing builds in Destiny, like builds kind of becoming more of a thing in Destiny, so basically pre Witch Queen, I would agree with you that I'm like, I don't care about any new exotics. Like builds don't really matter. But now there is so much freedom in what you can do with the game and its systems that I do think armor and weapons, maybe not weapons as much, but armor for sure, I think does play a pretty big factor.
They're getting better with armor. They're definitely getting better with armor.
They are getting better. So I do think that as long as they were quality pieces, or even if they were just like for fun pieces, because like there's some pieces that come out that you're like, yeah, this is never going to be how I'm going to kill Crota, but it's fun. You know, I can have a good time with it, right? Like I have a couple like that.
I agree with you. But is it like this was the best expansion because I got cryosthesia? You know what I mean? Like, does that make it? It's like, yeah, that's a fun gun to use, or whatever gun, or that's a fun exotic to use. But does it make the expansion? I guess is my point.
I wouldn't say it makes the expansion, but I do think it plays a role in it. I think what really makes an expansion, they are hitting on a lot of things that I think make an expansion. So, for example, if the Pale Heart is a fantastic zone, then cool. I think that they can get away with they don't need to have 2 zones. They can just have one fantastic zone.
What makes it fantastic?
I think that what makes it fantastic, I think they played around with this a little bit with Neomuna. Stuff like the Vex raid thing where like all the Minotaurs spawn, you get exotics from that. Like having that to be like kind of a random like encounter world boss type thing. I think that's really cool. I think having a lot of the kind of lore and a lot of the aesthetic of the world can also help out a lot. At the end of the day, though, I don't think that it needs terminal overload, for example, is an activity on Neomuna. Do I care about terminal overload anymore? No. It is essentially a seasonal activity for the expansion. And past that, I don't really care about it all that much, especially since the weapons from it aren't incredible. I think even if you made them incredible, it still only gives it a couple more months of legs. So I don't think it necessarily needs that. But I think aesthetic, and I think having it feel a little bit more living with those kind of like random world boss type encounters, I think makes it a fantastic encounter. Or having it change, like the last fantastic zone I can think of would be Dreaming City because of the whole cycle thing where it's like, oh, it's the week 1, week 2, week 3 are all different, and it cycles through them, and the landscape changes, what you can do there changes, all
See,
that kind
I
of
like
stuff
that.
changes.
I mean, that's a little bit better. Yeah, I like that.
So I think something like that to me was their last fantastic zone. Throne World was whatever, it's fine. Neomuna, I think, is probably their next closest.
Something I was thinking about when I was playing. So I play another, I would say live service, but like MMO type game, RuneScape. And obviously this game is timeless. It has been out for 20 plus years, and it is just a fantastic game overall. And it has so much content. And I was wondering, I'm like, what makes something so special? What makes something so special about getting like doing stuff in RuneScape, and not just RuneScape. This happens in every game, but RuneScape is one I'm more familiar with. Is like the game itself is just a clicking game, so the gameplay might not be fun, but you get your endorphins going, you get your dopamine hits. And why am I getting that? But I'm not getting it from a game that I love, like Destiny. Now I am whenever I do a raid and I'm chasing Eyes of Tomorrow. I'm chasing the Vex Mythoclast. I got it. That's that thing I want. I want that. And we only get that from raids. Is there a possibility? Is there a way? Because like back in the day, because I feel like it's kind of just easy to get everything now. And I don't mean everything, because like there's some things that are random drops, like Trinity Ghoul still is a random drop. But I feel like it's so easy to get. There's no... I don't know. I don't know the solution. I'm just kind of proposing the idea of back in the day, Destiny 1, you don't have Gjallarhorn, but your friend does, and you beat a boss encounter and you got it. You played a PvP match and you got it. That freaking feeling was better than anything else, man. But but that feeling is kind of gone. Whereas in RuneScape, I'm doing a Slayer task and I'm killing abyssal demons, and I don't need an abyssal whip, but I do need money. Whereas that's where something in Destiny we don't really get. We don't have the like the extracurricular kind of. We don't have that extension. So it's like if I get another Trinity Ghoul, I don't give a shit. Yeah. Whereas if I get an abyssal whip, I didn't get an abyssal whip because I'm just gonna sell it. I got 1.4 mil, which is not a lot of money, but it's a boom. I got this drop. It's a 1 in 500 chance drop. Whereas if I get another, like I said, if I get another Trinity Ghoul, I don't care.
Yeah, I think that kind of goes into, I think they've solved some of those problems recently. Whereas like, exotics used to auto decrypt into some random thing. Whereas now you get an exotic engram, you can go to Raoul, you can rework it into whatever.
Okay, so focusing is nice. I can't say that.
Focusing has been really nice. I've been loving that because I'll go and I'm trying to get like a 70 stat Vesper of Radius.
Right.
I'm so into Vesper of Radius.
It's very good. It's very good.
It's very good. And so I think they've solved some of those problems. I do still think there's a lot of ways to go, where I do think that what it is that Destiny doesn't really allow for a lot of personal goal growth. It kind of has linear paths that it wants you to grow on, and once you hit that path, you kind of stop. They've gotten better with this, but like one thing I think that would go a long way with it would be things like weapon levels. Like once you reach 20, or technically 30 if you want the Memento skin, 30, that's it. It doesn't matter. So my level 200 Brigand's Law is no different than the level 30 Brigand's Law you might have, or something like that, right? And I think that's an opportunity where they can enter that personal growth, where kind of like you said, you get a drop and it's like, oh, this isn't like something that I actually wanted, but I can translate it into something that does meet my personal goals. That's something that I hope that they continue to expand on, probably post Final Shape. I think Final Shape is really going to be just about delivering the most quality out of what they can deliver. And so actually talking to you has made me realize, when they say they want to be as good as Forsaken, I don't think they're trying to say it from a content standpoint. I think you're right, because they probably look at a lot of that content similarly, where they're like, would adding a new race really do that much? Or do we add in the subjugators, the new like enemy type that we're going to fight? And is that going to be more beneficial? And I would probably at the end of the day say that I'd rather have the subjugators. Having a new enemy race, they're not going to be in the content enough, like throughout the rest of the game. Like they'll be in the campaign.
And they're not as impactful.
Yeah, and then I'm just never going to see them because they're in
Right.
like one strike and they're maybe in like one raid or something like that. So I think it's better to have the enemy types, adding in like the subjugators, and like with Lightfall we got tormentors. I think you're right. I think that's probably them looking at quantity would be a new enemy type or enemy race, whereas quality is let's add in a new enemy type that is
I would
something that our players have never had to face before. Like
fully agree
plays
with that.
completely different. You have to change up your strategy. You can't fight a tormentor the way you fight anything else in the game, because that thing is just in your face 24/7 and it wants to kill you.
Right.
And so I think you're right. I think that that's an instance of a quality. Let's make a quality thing over a quantitative thing. But I still think that there are another example. The two going down this list, basically the two zones. I think you're right. If they can make Pale Heart fantastic, I don't need a second zone. That's fine. I don't need a second zone if Pale Heart is awesome. Raid and a dungeon.
But we're getting those regardless, right? Like it was like, because even despite the Lightfall raid, what was it? I don't even remember. Ron.
Root of Nightmares. Yeah,
So
Root of Nightmares.
Despite that being easy, we still got one and we still run it, and the guns are good and the exotic is good, and the exotic, I mean, not even is the exotic good. The exotic is the best exotic in the game. It is the best raid exotic ever.
Is really good. I definitely think this might be a bit of a hot take. I don't know how people outside of like my clan really feel about Ron. But I think Ron is pretty bad. And it's hard to get people to actually want to run it because it's just not very good. Comparatively, it's still a Destiny raid. It's still got some awesome moments in it, but like it ain't Valid the Disciple.
You look at the numbers and just in terms of clear rate, you know that it was just made to be a little bit easier. But I get it, but it's still a raid. I mean, it's not exactly what we wanted, but
going back to the whole quality versus quantitative, the quantity is we got a raid. The quality is it's fine. The loot's really good from it,
but that doesn't mean take it away from us. That doesn't mean take it away from us to give us something better. They could have just added a mechanic, like make us have to kill those tormentors, make us have to grab something from the tormentors and dunk it, just to give us something extra to do instead of having 5 people on ad clear
while one person does the raid for it. Got it.
And even then, the mechanic that the people that are actually doing it, the first, each encounter you can, like the second one you have 2 people doing it, but the first one you can have 1 person do it. Even then, it's not even a hard mechanic. It's a pretty fucking simple mechanic. And then the third encounter, macrocosm doesn't even do anything. It doesn't even match anything. It's not the same encounter at all.
Yeah, I definitely think that. It got talked about earlier in the year where people said like Lightfall was a filler expansion. And I think that based off of what we kind of know about Final Shape, to an extent, I think that is true, but I don't think they treated it as filler. I think is the big difference is I don't think they treated it as like, oh, this is a whatever thing. I still think they set out to make a thing that was really good, and they just didn't have the time to reach, I think, those goals to make it as quality as we would want it. Whereas the Witness raid, to me, I need it to be like one of the best raids, and I think that's where that quality comes in, where they're probably looking at, to this day, I still think Last Wish is one of their best raids. So kind of back to your whole point about quality versus quantity, if they can make another Last Wish, another, like the Witness is the new like Last Wish, like incredible design, everyone's doing something, you feel triumphant when you beat it, then totally. Yeah. I'm down with that. And I'm fine if we don't get a dungeon during the expansion, because we obviously haven't been getting those anyways. We get those during the seasons, but even if they didn't give us a dungeon, if the raid is that good, cool. I'm happy with that.
Right.
The PvP maps and the strikes, I do think are something that needs to happen every expansion. I think like what was it? 1,000 days we went without a new PvP map is insane.
So I'm out of that market because I personally could not care less anymore about Destiny PvP, but I do understand its necessity, because at the end of the day, PvP is what gets most people to come back, because even if like I have things to grind, I guess, in Destiny, I really get on because I'm codependent and I like spending time with my friends. So I get on to do a raid, and nothing gets me more excited than accomplishing a goal together, even if it's something we've done a million times. I will always love doing any raid at all. I'm doing Vault of Glass every night. I could do that all the time.
Yeah, you're a stronger man than me.
But PvP is not where it is. Like, I just love hanging out with my friends, and I think that hanging out with because like I'm not gonna get all my friends on Jackbox every night, and so that's just not gonna happen. But I can get them on Destiny to do a raid because they might need something out of it. But PvP is not my wheelhouse. But I do understand its importance because that's everything. I mean, Fortnite has a creative mode or whatever, right? No one's playing that. People are playing the PvP. That's what gets people to come back.
Yeah, PvP is extremely good retention, and that's something that they're struggling with right now is retention. So I think they gotta have good PvP. They gotta have PvP content, not just tuning and balance updates like they have been doing traditionally. We've been getting a few maps here and there, but for the longest time I've said that one map a year. I'm not even a PvP guy. Like, I do play PvP, I have fun with it with the clan, but one map a year is just unacceptable. They have to have more than that type of content to feed into that. And strikes too. Grandmasters are like a huge loop in Destiny now, especially like, using my clan as an example. Grandmasters are what gets run like 6 out of 10 times every night. People are running Grandmasters like crazy, back to back to back to back. Let's keep going. Let's do it again. Let's do it again. Can we do it faster? Blah, blah, blah. Like, I do think adding in more strikes is a big thing that they can do to help with that player retention. I think just in general, the ritual playlists need a lot of attention.
I think that there's something that needs attention. I don't exactly know what it is. I think that going back to what I said about RuneScape is like, when I have this opportunity to get a cool drop, that's when I start to like really love it. I'm not saying, because we went from like a looter shooter to a min-max shooter. It's because I don't care about the loot itself anymore. I care about min-maxing the loot I already have. And that's not even because I have a lot of time played. I mean, it's really just because that's all there is to do. I mean, I have a guy, he's probably in chat, Iron Man. He just started playing, and he's already at this min-max section of the game, So there are a couple things, like he might not have a Trinity Ghoul yet, and he's longing for one. And once he gets one, he'll feel good about it. Maybe he's got it. I don't know. But like the point is like, he'll get these things kind of in due time slowly, but it's going to feel good when he gets it. But then that's kind of it. He's not going to feel good when he gets another one. And so even if he gets, like, going back to your Vesper, he gets a good Vesper, then he doesn't need to get another one. He doesn't need to focus anymore. He doesn't need to acquire these good drops. Like, so it's and at this point he's just going for this min-max. So the looter part of the game has really kind of lost on it. Like, we used to sit in Destiny 1 farming the loot cave all day just to get Ingrams to fly in. If you would call somebody insane, if, like, say the loot cave still existed, the way the state of Destiny right now, you would think somebody was insane for just sitting there trying to farm Ingrams. Who cares? To be honest, when you go to that postmaster, sometimes you might not even click on the thing. You might just get rid of it because it's not worth your time.
Yeah. I didn't really think of that, but yeah, you're 100% right. If you saw somebody shooting into a cave right now, you'd be like, the hell are you doing, bro?
Because Ingrams are worthless. Like, if my postmaster's full, I'm just pissed.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, damn, I might get Eyes of Tomorrow and I might miss it or whatever. So
interesting. Yeah, I didn't think about that. I mean, hot take, maybe sunsetting was a good idea, guys. Because sunsetting all the loot every year, maybe that was the key. Maybe Bungie was onto something and players just weren't ready for it.
I don't even know what the solution is. I'm just proposing the problem.
I think the solution is always just going to be, the unfortunate thing is you're always going to run into you're always going to run into that problem of like power creep, essentially, right? And you're always going to run into that issue of once you have the powerful thing, you're, like you said, the looter is essentially over until 2-3 seasons or an expansion later, the next broken thing comes out, and then you go and get that min-max, and then you got that min-maxed. I think that's how a lot of players play it. I know people like you and me are a little bit more like, we like to have fun with some of the exotics in the build and stuff like that. So the looter can survive for a little bit longer, but this kind of leads into even another, a semi quicker topic in relation to Final Shape is what if you would have asked me a year ago,
or even 6 months ago, what's the plan for Destiny after Final Shape? I would have probably told you it's the same as what we've been getting, just we get the episodes instead of seasons. So you get your 3 episodes, you get your yearly expansion, get your 3 episodes, yearly expansion, 3 episodes, yearly expansion, so on and so forth, so on and so forth. But now with all of this, I do wonder if that's still the plan. Like if that's what the map looks like, what happens after the 3 episodes they've promised after Final Shape? Is it another expansion? Is it just another set of 3 episodes? Like I wonder what the plan is post all of this stuff now, especially because looking at Final Shape, if retention's already bad, how many people have already basically said, once I finish Final Shape, I'm out. That's my 10 years. Similar to Avengers Endgame, where people say the MCU for them ended at Endgame. They stopped kind of caring after that because they just wanted that ending to that saga. And then that's it. I'm out. They don't really care about the projects anymore. And I wonder, once again, going to the whole Final Shape has to be amazing, because if it's not, you're not only going to have drop off from those people, but you're going to have drop off from other people where it's going to be like, oh, well, if this isn't that good, why am I going to just keep sticking around? 2 mediocre expansions in a row. Right. I don't know, man. What do you think? What do you think they do?
I don't know what they do, but I think it's kind of, there are things that the companies can do to make their games better. And to make it feel like this is something that we want, because I would argue Forsaken, Taken King, these are great expansions, and it does keep people in. But I think that it's a little bit, and this is going to go into the next kind of topic. We could maybe put a pin in it, or we can just move on. But sure. It's player sentiment, not just player sentiment of because of the devs, but because of themselves. We have to allow ourselves to like something, and I have a problem with this. Like whenever But I've pulled back a little bit. I mean, I look at Lightfall and I'm like, okay, this story was awful. They wanted me to care about Rohan. I did not care about Rohan.
Yeah.
They was too fast. There was no relationship building. It wasn't a good write-in. It just wasn't. And it wasn't a good write-out. It was very obviously what was going to happen. And not that I always need a twist, but it's like, dude, what is happening here? This is not even good. I didn't care at all. And Nimbus was annoying. It didn't feel, I don't know, nothing felt good about it. But at the same time, I can't be like, well, that was such a bad experience. Like I paid for it. I feel like I got my money's worth. I got my dungeon. Sure. I got my seasons. I got my time with my friends. It all depends on how the player kind of boils it down. And I think that, because I think that's something that players need to kind of take a step back. It's like, and we'll go into something else too. I like with people, they're refunding, right? They're like, oh, we're mass refunding this new expansion that's not even out yet.
Yeah,
it's not out yet. If you played it and you're like, I don't like it, which is ridiculous because it's the same game that it's always been for 10 years. It's how it is. But I mean, it always gets better. So if anything, it's better. So you are just being a bit pretentious if you're already refunding, not only because we don't have it, but also because it's going to be what do you expect? It's the same thing it's always been. And so now one might be better than the other, but ultimately you're still getting more Destiny. And so refunding it to me is such a silly concept already, because like what were you? Okay, so let's say you took your 100, you spent it on a product that you cannot get until February. Does them delaying it, I don't know if I'm assuming that's the main cause of refunds is the delay. Does delaying it do anything for you? Not you, obviously, but the people who are refunding it. What is that doing? Is it sending a message to Bungie? Why are we sending a message to Bungie? If anything, now is the time that they need money. They miss their revenue. They're laying people off. Do you want the game to die? You have 10,000 hours into it. Shut the hell up. Don't refund don't refund the game. Because look, what is refunding it going to do? You already don't have the product. You won't have it till February, and you still won't have it. You still won't have it. So what is refunding it going to do?
I've seen a couple of different things where some people are like, oh, I'm going to refund it because of the, I can't support a company like Bungie that would lay off 8% of their staff. And it's like, dumbass, they just laid it off because they didn't hit revenue goals. You're now decreasing that said revenue. Like, I don't know what you're expecting. But I think that
Also, they've never been in the workforce. Like, layoffs happen. It just because like Bungie doesn't mean they don't care about their associates. That means that they can't afford it. Like, if the money's not coming in, they can't pay these people.
Yeah, I mean,
and if these people have the, if I was going to say real quick, if people have, if they have the, now not everybody, but if some people have Bungie as a background, they're probably not going to have much issue finding jobs.
Yeah, they'll get work, thankfully. Well, I don't know. With
not
the year
always. Not always. I get that.
The year we had, maybe not. But my whole thing with layoffs, we probably should have started with the whole layoffs thing and just kind of just laid it out flat. Layoffs suck.
Period.
Us talking about all this stuff, we're not saying that any of the layoffs were like deserved or anything like that, or like anything
at all
those lines. Layoffs suck, but at the end of the day, it is business. I'm always going to be upset when the people who make the decisions don't get the repercussions. But unfortunately,
Agreed.
That's just the way capitalism works. And we unfortunately have to live with it until that changes. But I think that, so there you go. There's the layoffs.
The disclaimer. Yeah.
The disclaimer, layoffs suck. We know, trust us. Like it's not fun. So I think that in relation to like the refunding and stuff like that, I think it just kind of goes back to the whole player sentiment. I think players are upset about stuff. I'm more with you where I don't really I see some reasons to be upset, but the content and what they're making, I don't think is it. The content is fun. I still have a great time playing Destiny all the time. I play it every single week, sometimes almost every day during certain parts of the year. I easily get my $100 worth and more and more and more, like easily.
I would agree with that.
I think Pasta actually brought up earlier in the chat, and I actually agree. The annoying things to me and the things that have been decreasing my player sentiment are things like the game breaking down, like constantly having breakdowns in the game, unstable networks, them getting DDoSed all the time, game breaking bugs.
Yeah, but even Fortnite could get DDoSed. Even Sony as a company could get DDoSed. They did. I mean, do you remember the 2012 or 2013 or whatever Lizard Clan or whatever, where they were taking people out. They took Microsoft and Sony out for, I'm pretty sure, 2 weeks or something like that. I remember I couldn't play Xbox and Destiny or whatever we were playing back then for weeks.
Yeah,
weeks. And that's so if the average hacker, not the average hacker, but if hackers like this can take a whole company down, then that's not the company's fault. We can't blame Bungie for that, right?
Yeah, and that's the thing is that I think that's why I find the blaming of Bungie for these things. It's not necessarily that I blame Bungie for it, but it does still affect the experience. For example, I had a whole master raid farm set up for Valve the Disciple, the master raid that only comes around like once a season. And of course, that was the weekend they got DDoSed. Couldn't play it at all. Tried to do first encounter for like an hour, kept getting kicked out. And that sucks. That for me as a player, I'm like, well, I'm just not even going to bother next time because the game's just not working. And I think that is one thing that they need to look into. Granted, there's only so much you can do against DDoSers and all that kind of stuff. And oddly enough, these DDoSers are probably coming from players who are like trying to get back at Bungie, but they're really just getting back at the player base. And it's like, why are you doing that?
It's very ironic.
Yeah. And so I think that those have been the things decreasing my player sentiment. And actually, to pull from Pasta again, the other thing that's been pulling the one thing that's been pulling me down as well is I still cannot believe we are 3 years removed from when they announced their multimedia IP plans and wanting to make Destiny go across several different types of media. Sorry. And we have not seen a single fruit bore from that. And I think that is ridiculous. And I think, honestly, that could be a reason, not that they're chalking it up in their reports, but I think that could be a reason that, retention's down. Like, the reason why League of Legends is able to hold on to players as much as they do is because they've got such a stranglehold on multimedia that they are releasing stuff that's not even League of Legends. It's just a music video, a boy band that they just released, a separate game, Song of Nunu, books, comics. They're releasing all this stuff that you are almost always within that IP if you want to be within that IP. And that's just not the case with Destiny. with Destiny, they could have already had books and comics and all this other stuff because they've had that team for 3 years. And so I'm wondering, like, what is that team doing? How do we not have books, comics? How do we not have a K-pop crossover like Overwatch just got? How do we not have, all this different stuff that multimedia can bring in? Because that goes also a long way towards player sentiment.
Yeah.
And so I think they're missing a lot by not having that multimedia team really pumping stuff out. Because even during these low periods, even during the periods when I'm not playing League of Legends, I'm still engaging in the IP. I'm not playing.
I think that so I would agree with that a little bit, and I'm going to go into what Saban just said. Basically, is that so League, like they did different media type, they have also multiple genres. That's not something that I feel like Destiny can really hark on, right? I think that Destiny has a good story, and I think that it can be told from different perspectives. So you could have the story of Cade be a Netflix series. You could have a movie based on The Guardian, right? And just tell the story of what we know in Destiny as the perspective of The Guardian as a movie series or something. These things could happen. You could have books. You could have they already have comic books, but you could have more of these things, and that's fine. But are you going to get a Song of Nunu type game out of Destiny? No, never.
No, I mean, I wish.
There's no way. There's no, the IP doesn't even kind of allow for it.
But you could have said the same. You could have said the same thing about League.
I disagree.
Arcane.
I disagree.
You said the same thing before Arcane.
I disagree because if you look in their lores, you see that they're all from different. They're all from different, like new, like they got the Freljord, you got Demacia, Demacia is the war torn, like I am regal, kingdom, versus the Freljord is this cold, frozen wasteland with kings and queens that fight for their territory, and you got I don't know them all, but Noxia is you got all of them, and there's all different kinds, and they come from different places, and when they cross over, that's where you get League of Legends. They started with the crossover. And now they're breaking out, and you got Echo having his own platformer game. I don't think that I think that Destiny can have those things, but I don't think you're getting a platformer game out of Destiny. I don't think that you're getting an adventure Destiny game like Song of Nunu.
See, I 100% disagree.
What is it then? Who is it? Is it going to be some Elixir, I guess?
Yeah, that's the thing. You talk about like different areas. Like, sure, I think, and this is actually a thing, maybe not a stake in the game, but something that I hope that they fix post Final Shape, where once we finish up with the Final Shape, we already have tons of lore about locations outside of the Sol system, like Tora Bottle, the Cabal homeworld, Fundament, the Hive homeworld. You've got the Ecumu, which is like a galactic global community. Essentially, you've got Reese, which is the Lixney homeworld. Like, you've got all these different places and all these things you could explore that you really could build up and have that cross genres. I think that the problem comes with where I think a lot of game developing studios are actually falling behind on, which is they're being too precious with their IP.
I just mean as many. I don't mean you can't have any. I just mean as many. Like, you got, for example, you got Halo, right? Halo was also created by Bungie, funny enough, and it's a space shooter. What is Destiny? A space shooter. But what do you get when you cross the genre? You get a TV show that is a space shooter. You get an RTS that is a space shooter. You're not getting a KDA pop style video. Like, you're just not.
But the thing is you could, and I think
I guess you could, but it's not. I guess it's not as verse because you got. I don't know, like, you're not getting that out of Halo, and Halo is a much larger IP than Destiny.
Larger maybe in terms of recognizability, but as far as like lore and like what you could do within it, I don't think
probably.
So.
I'm just saying that I'm saying, going back to what we initially talked about, putting your eggs in too many different baskets, and like, are we funding where, like, I agree that there should be something else, because when you got your pop figures and you got your comic books, that's great for Destiny. You got your lore books, that's great for Destiny. You got your jacket, you got a bomber jacket or whatever, like, that's great. All this stuff is great. Then you throw it into different media. I want that. Of course I want a Destiny TV show, but I don't think that there's as much, because then it's like, then you start adding in what we talked about earlier is risk. If you make a, like Pasta mentioned, a fighter where you could pick Oryx or Atheon. Now, obviously we're not the game devs, so we're not creating this thing, but say it's a good one, but is it as good as Project L is going to be. Is it
Sure.
as good as Mortal Kombat? It's going to have to compete with things like Street Fighter and Mortal Kombat. Are we doing that?
I think that's where this is why I say I wish more people would do what Riot did with Riot Forge, where they
Branch
said,
it out.
we're not going to make this stuff. Riot Games does not have the time to make Song of Nunu, a 9-hour adventure game that you're going to play and never come back to. Same with Bungie. Bungie does not have time.
But they don't even right now, they don't even have the funds.
I mean,
Riot
right
does
now,
have the funds.
but 3 years ago, I guarantee you they could have made a lot of this stuff happen. That was the champagne and cocaine era of Destiny, essentially, where they're building water slides in the office, not literally, but I'm making a metaphor. So I think that's the problem, is that if they would have started on this multi-IP thing, I think that it wouldn't really be a huge deal, because even during the times where I don't like League of Legends, put it this way, I would have stopped playing League of Legends years ago if it was not for multimedia. Them making the media, or them making the IP multimedia. There you go. Sorry. I would have stopped playing long ago. And I feel like developers are still underplaying how important it is right now to get that cross media. How important it is to get people to not just play your IP, but listen to your IP.
You know what's funny is I feel what's so funny about it is Fortnite did the opposite. It took all other IPs and brought it in. Yeah, instead of branching out, they brought them all in.
Yeah, I mean, hey, some could say Fortnite are geniuses for that regard.
Yeah.
And so I think that's another mistake that they made in the lead up to this. Is I get some things, if they, let's say 3 years ago, they're like, hey, we all get in the office building, we're going to make a Destiny anime. Cool. That's going to take some time. You got to find team. You got to find all this stuff. You got to find people who want to make it, all that kind of stuff. That's going to take time.
And that's something that that's timeless, though. Stories are timeless, so you can, and they're the forefront of the human condition. And so stories are great. Continue to make stories. I'm all down for that. But when you start making other video games, if your main video game is already not popping off, not saying it's not popping off, but like you could throw your eggs in too many baskets, and then you're losing money, and then that's not good.
But to my point with the whole Riot thing, I think that's why Riot was smart in saying, we're going to basically give the basket to other people to put their eggs in.
But they're the ones providing the basket, i.e. the money.
They're providing the money. They're providing the IP more than anything, and then they can get funding for it. Not necessarily
that's fair, especially being owned by Sony. I guess that could, yeah,
exactly. That's what I mean. You could go to Sony and be like, "Hey, Sony, we found a developer X, Y, and Z who wants to make a RTS Destiny game.
But that fits. That 100% fits, because I would play that."
And that's what I'm saying is there's so many games you could make within the Destiny universe. And they're just not taking advantage of the IP in that regard. And I think it's because they're being a little precious with the IP. And I'm hoping that this is just kind of because they want to maybe get through Final Shape's story, and then they'll blow up the IP and let everybody kind of get in and start touching things.
You want to know where I think what could and you would call me absolutely insane because it's another live service variant?
Sure.
A Destiny MOBA.
I mean, they're making that gummy bears or whatever.
With Guardians,
it's not Destiny, but
I mean, imagine your Guardian. You got Axiom Bolt grenades, and that's one of your abilities. And you got your Super, which is your ultimate, and it's a Nova Bomb. Like, that could be so fun.
Yeah, there's so much you can do with the IP. Like this might be heresy to you, but I do think that they've made a better IP than Halo ever could have been. Just based off of the world.
That's not heresy to me, because I don't really care about the story of Halo. I think people praise the story of Halo. I think the Master Chief is very iconic, but I don't think that he or the story is anything special. It's just sci-fi.
Yeah.
Who cares?
I'm the same way. I think
Destiny
they made
is space magic.
Character.
It's way better.
Yeah. I agree. I think Master Chief, they made an iconic character and they put him through some trials, but the entire story doesn't really matter. It's just that Chief is cool. The armor is cool.
Yeah.
Right? And they took that times a million with Guardians and Destiny.
Although the books are more akin to Destiny. The Halo books are more akin to Destiny, which is really good.
Which is why I'm like, how did 3 years ago, you and me, HP, we're in charge of the Destiny multimedia project. The first thing you and me would have put on paper of we are getting this done within a year is get a fucking book. We are getting an author. We are writing Destiny books and we are publishing that. Like, we are getting that done. how they did not do that, I literally cannot understand how they just nothing for 3 years, not even a book. The comics that you're talking about, that's from the Activision era. They didn't even do those. Activision did.
Right.
I'm like, how did you guys fumble building this IP into something, especially during COVID? Like the amount
they did do comic books, but it seems like it was nothing to write home about.
Yeah, those comic books, they did like the comic collection, and yeah, that was Activision back before they split off and were independent. And so that's why I'm like, I don't get like how the multimedia side of this has fallen apart, because I really do think that would have done a lot for retention, or at the very least keeping money flowing, because then you're diversifying where your money's coming from. It's not all just coming from Destiny.
Right.
You know, because right now they've, you know, this is another thing that I find insane is people on Twitter will be like, oh, they're going to shut down Destiny. I'm like, you guys are absolutely insane. Like, Destiny has to exist until they have another product. They don't have another product. The Marathon's not out. That Gummy Bears, MOBA, whatever thing that they're making is at least like 3-4 years out. Like, you know, they have to make Destiny in perpetuity, at least until something else pops off. And even then, I don't think they would kill even if Marathon is like the next Fortnite, I don't think that kills Destiny. I think they keep Destiny alive. Now, in what regard, you know, does that mean we're still going to get yearly expansions? You know, does that mean we're still going to get like all these episodes? Like, who knows? But the IP is always going to exist there. They're not going to just be like, all right, we're done with the Destiny IP. Bye. Like,
oh, for sure,
never going to happen.
Yeah, of course. Especially they've created a world where, I mean, it's in space. I mean, like you said, there's other planets, and we're ending this Light and Dark saga. They're going to open up many, many, many more portals. You know, there's a lot more gateways we can go in the direction of Destiny, and in terms of story. And the story, from what you've told me and what I've heard from Pasta, is pretty incredible. So there's a lot they can do.
Let me ask you this as the layman. I know we're coming up on time, so you know we can get a couple of smaller questions out of the way. With Final Shape, you being the quote unquote layman, as you denote yourself, you being the layman, if Final Shape is just okay, or even if it's just good, if it's not amazing, what does that do for you? Are you still sticking around? You know, I'm sure you'll stick around for the episodes, but would you consider that your jumping off point? At that point, are you just kind of done?
Never. I don't think that anything. I mean, if they literally came out and they were like, hey, we fucking hate our consumers, I probably would take a step back a little bit. But I think for the most part, if I got something even lesser than Lightfall, now, of course, I want the culmination to be the best it can possibly be. The culmination of the Light and Dark saga, the thing that I played literally before the game came out. Not only did I play the 2-week early PlayStation beta, but I also played the week early Xbox beta, and then I played the official beta. And then I bought the game, and I bought the game twice, technically, and I've also bought it for a friend, and I've also bought expansions for a friend. I love this game. I love this IP. I've loved it since before day 0, day -14. I love it so much. So there's nothing that can get me off the train. Now, I think I'm a little bit, in terms of like your average gamer, I think that people will play Destiny and move on. I have friends that do that they play it, they enjoy it for what it is because it's time spent with friends, and then they move on. But I am the guy that's going to, now I'm not you or Pasta, I might not go for all collections logs, but I do love the game so much, and I love what it does for me. And so it could be worse than Lightfall, and I think it's still going to be fine for me. I'm never jumping off the train, if that's your question.
So let me follow up on that then, because you mentioned your friends kind of come and go. If Final Shape is bad, do you think your friends would essentially be like, I think I'm done. I think I'm done with Destiny.
Yeah, I think that's possible. I don't think Final Shape is what does that, though. I think lack of content is what does that. I think as long as there's a raid to be done and a little bit of a grind to be had, I think the game would fundamentally have to completely shift for all of my... Now, there's only like 2 or 3 of my group that actually actively stays on the train for the whole year. Now, I don't even stay on for the whole year. I like to, but right now we're in the dog days. You know, there's not much to be done other than just kind of grinding out a couple raids. And anytime that I get asked to get on a raid, I'm doing so. But if they say, let's do some PvP or campaign missions, I'm like, no, go fuck yourself. But even like you mentioned, you said maybe episodes aren't even keeping me around, because episodes are just seasons, and the seasons are just a slog. And to be honest, the recent seasons, while they might not be the best seasons, I actually have liked them the most because I don't feel like I have to be on every day. It doesn't feel like a job. And that shit, to me, I feel like I might be different than other people. A lot of people want to have something to do. They want to grind towards something. I don't mind grinding towards something, but I don't want it to be something that's arbitrary. I don't want to, light cap is 1800. Now next season it's 1900 and we got to get all fucking gear again and re-level up our gear. Yeah. That's so fucking tedious. Respect me. Respect my time. And so give me the content. I don't have to get on every fucking day. Like that nothing could get under my skin more. You got out of focus.
There you go. Maybe. Come on.
There you go.
Which is interesting that you bring up, because I do think player sentiment's down right now, but it is kind of weird because I feel like we're going to look back on this year and be like, this is one of the best years of Destiny, like from a content perspective, at least.
I mean, like the dungeon's fantastic. The dungeons the seasons are pretty good. The dungeon's great. The reprised raid is fantastic.
Like the lowest point is the expansion, which is kind of wild to say.
Right, and that's why I say I don't worry. That's why I say I never really worry about this, because we can go into the final shape and the story could be absolutely atrocious and the story's really good in the Grimoire like it used to be in Destiny 1, but it's not in the game. Now, that was a very bad point that they did to put all of it, but I wouldn't care because that's not me personally. I don't care. I care about the story, but if it's bad, I don't care. Now, some people might be like, if it's bad, like I don't care that Rohan died. I don't care that the Lightfall campaign was bad, but this year has been fantastic. And I've rated more this year than I ever have in Destiny, and I'm loving that.
Honestly, same. This has been, I actually looked at my heat map the other day, and this has been some of my most playtime in the game. Which is interesting. Now we're almost like poking holes in everything that we talked about, where it's like, if people like us are sticking around and like playing more, it does make me wonder, like, what's up with the player retention issue. But I guess maybe it's just like, it's hard for me to recommend getting into Destiny.
Right.
It's hard for me to say, oh yeah, you should totally just like
drop $3,000.
Yeah. That's interesting.
I don't think we solve anything here, but I do think that I think a lot of it really, if you want my honest like final thoughts on the whole thing, obviously with our disclaimer, all the layoffs are bad. I feel like Bungie should have maybe expected this like revenue drop, not necessarily expected the drop, but like I think it all boils down to the players to me. Like everyone's such a crybaby online. I genuinely think that, because like, why are we complaining about you spending $10 on a cosmetic? Who cares? Why? Because people are like, well, they're desperate. They've been charging for cosmetics. It's like, yeah, dude, they have to keep the game alive.
And also, I just find it funny where it's like, you can still go run the raids. Like the cosmetics in there are great. Run those, transmog that shit. Boom, you got dope armor. Easy peasy. Right. Pal does bring up new light experience sucks, which
I agree with that.
I think it's not great. Way to buy everything sucks, which I do agree with, though. The Paul Tassi article that I had did bring up that apparently that stuff still sells. So I do understand from their perspective why they still sell it, because apparently it's still doing pretty good numbers. I do think that like we are at the point where it's like, why do I have to buy Shadowkeep?
I agree with that. I fully agree with that.
Like, just give them. Same with like the Forsaken pack. It's like,
because telling my friends when they come in, because it sucks. Obviously, it's like, I think it's because they don't want they want money, but they also don't want people to go, well, I had to buy it, And now they don't have to buy it. It's free now. It's like, yeah, dude, because it's fucking 4 years old.
Yeah, it's like 4 years old, bro. Get over it. Like, I don't know what to tell you.
Not only that, it's like, because that's why the new light experience does suck, because they come in, they don't know what to do. They have to have a Sherpa. I don't think you're really getting through much and learning anything about the game until your friend tells you what to do. And me and Pasta actually literally just talked about this like yesterday. And I think that's just like something that it is frustrating. So Pal does bring up a good point. It's like that. We like, dude, we get a new friend in the game and he's like, hell yeah, this is amazing. I can play one raid with you guys. And we do the raid and he's like, dude, this game is amazing. And he's like, oh, what's that gun you guys are using? And we're like, oh, you gotta buy a $20 expansion. Hopefully it's on sale next week.
Yeah. I do wish that there was, I think the best way to simplify it is if they did have like an all-in pack, even if you made it like a large amount of money, make it $100 and it's like you get everything or
but
whatever.
no
like,
new player trying out a game is going to spend $100.
Absolutely not. But
you'd be lucky to get them to spend 60.
Yeah, if it's a new player who has like a bunch of friends who are pretty locked into it, I think there's actually a higher chance you would get them to do that because they're going to go buy a lot of that content anyways, right? People are already spending $100 up front for the expansion, so I don't think asking for, saying it's like, make it $60, $80, whatever it is. I think they do that every once in a while where they have like the legendary pack. In fact, you know what?
I think if it's 2 years old, they give it to you for free. So even if it's a raid, even if it's a dungeon, even if it's whatever, but going all the way back, they give all you that for free. And that's enough to get people addicted. Because like if you're sitting there playing King's Fall and Vault of Glass and whatever, let's say Ron or name all these dungeons and raids, Last Wish, they're playing all these, they're like, dude, these are so good, I love the guns from these, and I want more Destiny, I want another raid. Well, now you got to buy the $60 expansion. Like that, you give them all the other stuff for free and it gets them kind of addicted and wanting to play more Destiny, then they'll buy the new stuff.
So I'm looking at this right now. They, the Legacy Collection, it looks like they're updating it every year with the previous expansion. So right now for $60, you buy Destiny 2 Legacy Collection, and it gives you everything from Witch Queen back.
Not bad.
Yeah, $60 for that. I'm like, I don't know. I think maybe that's
well. That's the problem with it with advertising it as free because they get it in the game and they can't do anything. That's not a problem either because you're playing a game, man. You got to make money.
But also, like I wish that they would stop saying Destiny's free to play and just call it free to try because that's what it is. We're giving you all this content to try out. You can continue to play it in perpetuity if you want, but like it's not free to play. You're not going to keep getting free content. You're getting a select set of content that is free.
This is definitely a marketing ploy.
Yeah. Though looking at this, it looks like even if you buy the Legacy Collection, you do still have to buy the dungeon keys.
That's a bad sell.
Yeah.
That's the only thing that I agreed with when I saw stuff in the comments to like Astacross's videos and stuff when people were talking about microtransactions. I'm like, microtransactions are not bad. Dungeon keys, maybe. They might be. I don't think so initially. I think previous dungeon keys are. I don't think like the newest dungeon. I think that you'd still need a key for that because someone fucking created this thing. Pay for it.
That's the thing is I see it as if we didn't have the dungeon key, we wouldn't be getting 2 dungeons a year. And so I think that's just kind of the price of if I don't want that content.
Right. I shouldn't be paying for old dungeon keys, is what I'm saying. Like very old ones.
That's fair. I think you're probably right in that like once something's like 2 years old, I think they should just make it free or at least like highly reduced price. Like the dungeon keys go from being, I think they're like usually like $20, make it $10 or something like that. $5 per dungeon. I'm like, sure, why not? Like that's fine.
Right.
But I don't know. I'm very, like I said, to kind of get us to closing out, I was very confident in where Destiny was going to go post Final Shape until all this stuff. And now I really do
definitely
wonder.
Know you were.
I definitely do wonder now, not necessarily if we're going to get more stuff. We're going to get more stuff. Like I'm not worried about that. I know Destiny's not going away, but I do wonder, like, even the fact that they haven't officially announced the delay of Final Shape, the insider thing is that it's been delayed to June. And I feel like if they haven't come out with it and said it, at this point, I'm like, that's probably because that's an internal date and they don't even know if they're going to hit that. They might be looking at it and being like, if we want to make Final Shape excellent, it's not coming out until 2025. That'll leave us a year of Destiny nothing, essentially.
Yeah, but can you also? I think that stuff like that. Now, while that sucks, and it might kill 30% of the player base, like completely kill. They might not even ever come back, right? But imagine the hype. Now the expectations are high, but so is the hype, right?
That's true. I mean, if put it this way, if they said, "Hey, we're delaying a full year, February 2025 is when it's going to come out." But if they came out and it was like a Forsaken, once again, not necessarily quantity wise, but quality wise as good as Forsaken or better, I mean, at that point, you're almost delivering like a Destiny 3 at that point. Granted, it's still the same game, but like the amount of hype and expectation in it, like if they could deliver something like that,
I think they also still might need to change it a little bit to be closer to that Destiny 3 mark.
Sure.
Because we got to get that new subclass. We got to get XYZ. There's got to be more stuff for it to be that big of a banger.
If they gave us the new subclass, if they gave us all the stuff they've already promised and delivered even more on top of it.
But delaying it a year and not giving us something for a year, they're losing more revenue? No. I mean, we can get into a whole thing there, but like they got to be losing money there.
But at the same time, maybe that's the play with the layoffs where it's like, we know we're going to need a lot of runway. So let's just lay them off now so that we have that runway if we need it. And maybe they're like, hey, multimedia team, why don't you release a fucking book or something, bro? Make us some money.
Right.
But I mean, I don't know. Like, I would not be shocked at this point if it did get delayed. If anything, they'll pull a Division 2 where like Division, they like basically did a replay on like a bunch of the seasons and stuff like that, like brought back the battle passes and stuff. Hell, even if honestly, if they brought back all the raids and like a bunch of the sunset content, honestly,
Prison of Elders,
that could hold me over for a bit.
Yeah.
Like I could be held over by that.
Yeah.
Especially if like they, had like patterns and master versions and like a death weapons. Like, I don't know, man. I could go a couple months with that. Give me back all those raids with some new updates to them.
Yeah, there's one or two that I didn't even play, one that I didn't finish, and then one that I only beat a couple times. So yeah, I'd be about it.
Honestly, that may be the play. I know it's not easy to bring the raids back over because they've done so much to the engine and stuff since then. But if they're like, hey, we're delaying until February, summer of 2024. Is Destiny's Age of Triumph, Destiny 2's Age of Triumph from D1, where it's like, we're bringing back a bunch of the raids, it's got new content, all that kind of stuff. I don't know how much time they would need for that. I feel like it's probably more than we think.
Oh, I definitely know it's more than that for sure.
Yeah, because people would probably say, oh, that'll be easy. And I'm like, that shit's not going to be easy. But
well, especially since everything is so updated now, like 3.0s and all that good stuff. So.
But if they could get a team together, work 6 months, basically from beginning of next year until, because I think the Bungie 30th anniversary, I think they said took them about 8 months to make. So, I mean, not completely unreasonable.
But they also have to spend some of that time
obviously
making Final Shape good. Because if they just delayed it, that doesn't do anything for them. They have to make it good.
Still, I bet you could get a small strike team in place. At this point, I'm talking out my ass. I hate talking out my ass like this, where I don't know what I don't really know what I'm like asking about.
We're just hopeful. We're coping. The copium is high.
We're coping. I want Destiny to be successful post Final Shape. I don't want it to fall off. I don't want it to be the MCU of video games, where the MCU is just a fucking mess right now. I want it to be successful. I want Marathon to come out and be a banger.
That's my biggest hope is Marathon is just the heat. And not only that, the extraction genre just flies off the shelves, man. I want it to be amazing.
That's what I hope. I'm hoping that they're the ones that really crack the formula open. There's been a couple games I've played that have gotten close, and I'm like, oh, if we could just take this like just a little bit further, like we're there.
I think the two that are great right now that I only even know about is Tarkov and Dark and Darker. And I wouldn't download Dark and Darker on any PC right now, so don't do that. But that being said, both of those are fantastic. But for me personally, I don't like either one's gameplay.
Same.
I love Bungie gameplay. I do love playing them, but Bungie's gunplay and gameplay, I'm about it,
man. Oh man, I'm getting excited just thinking about that. Whew. That'd be the hype. That'd be the hotness.
Damn. How did we pull 2 hours so quickly?
And I could keep going for like
100%. No, 100%. So next week's going to be exciting. I think next week is not the nominees. So next week is just going to be maybe just a chill. We'll talk about whatever games we've been playing. We can maybe even come back to this if we wanted to. But the week after that, I'm pretty sure is nominees. I think the nominees are listed. And if not, it should be the week following. But I mean, so we're not going to stream the Game Awards because that's on a Thursday. And it'll be at nighttime. I would love to do it if it were on our normal time, but it'll be like super late. I would love to get in a call with you and take notes with you though, if you want to on that Thursday.
I mean, I'll be watching them, so yeah, I'll be around.
And then that Saturday we'll go over everything that we heard and what we hate and what we love about it. I would love to do that.
Hell yeah.
And then we got to get you to binge Attack on Titan tonight so you can catch up.
Honestly, I might do it. Maybe not tonight, but tomorrow night I might binge the rest of it. How many episodes are in the final season?
Oh, I don't know. I know there's like 87 total.
Okay. So I bet I probably have like 30 episodes left. So yeah, I could binge that in a day or two. Final season episodes. Season 4, final season.
Yeah, well, reading all that's going to make it sound ridiculous because it is. Season 4, Part 3, Part 2, Part 1.
Okay, so I have 30 episodes ahead of me. Technically less because I actually already watched a couple of these episodes. So yeah, I could binge that.
And then you have an hour-long episode before this one, and then tonight's is an hour as well.
All right. Well, we'll see. We'll see if I finish it up. Maybe we'll have a little Attack on Titan section next week.
That would be awesome, but we don't have to. It's all a little off topic, but I would love to.
The topic's just you and me. That's all the topic
Okay,
is.
I'm fair. That's fair. I love that. All right, that's that. I think that's it, guys. You have anything else to close out?
Nope, I think that's it. I would love to hear more people's thoughts on this. So, leave them in HP's Discord, talk about them during the streams and stuff, whatever it might be. I would love to hear other people's thoughts and I would also love to just hear what you guys want post Final Shape. I think that's what I'm most interested in with a lot of people is what are your feelings post Final Shape and what do you want out of the game? We
should do a once we do our rebrand of our name and stuff, we should maybe do a Twitter or whatever.
Yeah, Twitter
and
an email or something so people can write into us.
Or even comments on the YouTube video when they get posted. Like literally once I hit stop streaming, it's posted. So I would the YouTube comments will be good too.
Yeah, I would love to hear you guys' thoughts on what you want because I think that'll help me kind of understand. I'm such a small niche of the Destiny player base that is just so ingrained into the IP that I feel like I lose sight of kind of the general sentiment of what's going on.
Right.
But yeah, that's it. That's it for me.
All right. That's good. All right, we're going to close it out then. See you guys later.
See you guys.